Nowadays, students like yourselves are too quick to rely on memorization when learning new things. We often forget the most fundamental aspects of learning and have adapted this counterproductive mindset of forcefully stuffing tons of information into our brains, which is not good. In this video, I'll be teaching you how to learn, running through topics such as active recall, spaced repetition, and generally the best methods about how to study, and by the end of it, hopefully turning revision into something more fun and enjoyable. I really hope you enjoy. Make sure to like and subscribe. Hello everyone, today I'll be sharing super efficient study techniques and teaching you how to learn and how you can use all of these tips to achieve the highest grades. My name's Jaden and I'm a dental student studying at the University of Bristol. This video will be structured in the following way. Firstly, learning what understanding the content means. Secondly, understanding the importance of memorizing the content. And then I'll go on to explain a couple invaluable study techniques such as active recall and spaced repetition, giving real examples of how you can use them at the end of the video. If you happen to learn anything useful, please like and subscribe. First of all, I want to talk about the first step into how to learn, which is understanding the content. To learn something, you must first understand it, and then and only then should you go on to try and memorize it. I define understanding as being able to explain the concept you've just learnt to someone else, and then I'd expect you to be able to teach the whole topic to me and answer most of the questions I have. Take a look at this. Here's a very typical example of how you can use understanding to help you learn. This is a diagram showing some muscles of the neck that I learnt in anatomy. Don't be worried though, because although I know it can look confusing initially, let's try to break it down and you'll see how much easier it gets. And this is an example of me being able to teach something because I've understood it, and hopefully you'll be able to get the concept even though you may not know much about the muscles of the neck. So here it goes. Although you may not be able to tell because it can be quite challenging if you haven't seen any of this stuff before, we're looking at the front of the body, so it's called the anterior part of the body, and the specific section we're looking at is the neck. You can see at the top that there is your jaw or your mandible, and underneath are all the neck muscles. This bone here that I'm outlining is called the hyoid bone, and all the muscles above the hyoid bone are called the suprahyoid muscles, and the ones below the hyoid bone, which we're focusing on today, are called the infrahyoid bone. Supra means above and infra generally means below. And we're looking at all those muscles that you can see on the diagram. A lot of these muscles overlap each other, so we'll have to do a good job at determining which muscle is which. To understand these muscles and to actually memorize them, it's a very logical process because they're named after where they come from and what they attach to. So first off, we need to find like our landmarks, and here is the thyroid and here is the sternum. And since we've got the hyoid, thyroid and sternum, we can start to identify these muscles. First of all, if you see this muscle that goes off to the side, and you just have to memorize this one, but it's quite easy because it's the only one. It's called the omohyoid, and it's literally this muscle of the neck which goes off to the left and to the right on both sides of your body. So the muscle that goes off to the sides is called the omohyoid. And then we've got this muscle here which connects from the hyoid to the thyroid, and we happen to call it the thyrohyoid. So as you can see, you're getting the general gist and they make sense depending on where they come from. And then you can look at the muscle which looks like it connects to the thyrohyoid, and it's from the sternum to the thyroid. And so we call it the sternothyroid. And there's one final bigger neck muscle, and this connects the hyoid to the sternum, and we call it the sternohyoid. So in total, there's the omohyoid, which goes to the sides, thyrohyoid, sternothyroid, and sternohyoid. I know it can be quite a mouthful as they're all very similar, and there is an example of how you can use your general understanding to help you answer questions without really having to memorize it. And I hope you've learnt something useful or interesting about the neck. And the way I just taught you something is the way you can teach others something, and it's a way you can make learning something more fun, something more than just learning facts or words, something actually interesting. The second thing I want to talk about today is about how to memorize the content after you've understood it, which is the second part of learning. Being able to store information from your long-term memory and being able to recall it is such a necessary and useful skill that all students will need, as most exams nowadays are pretty much memory and just recalling facts. The reason that memorizing something comes after understanding is that you cannot easily memorize something before you've actually understood it. Your brain works by making links to many different concepts and putting them all together until you memorize something. And your brain wouldn't be able to memorize something easily without being able to associate something you've just learned with another concept you've learned in the past. So hopefully you've understood why memorization is important, and in this next part of the video, now we'll go on to explain the two best ways to memorize your content. There are two main steps that you need to do. The first thing is using active recall, and the second thing is using spaced repetition. A lot of you will have heard the term active recall. I've used it many times in the past before, and you may have heard it from other people speaking about it. Many people think of active recall as a way of actually revising and studying, but it can be used and it should be used as a way of learning content. Combining them together is the best way to revise, and it really should be a fundamental practice in anything you do because it really can be applied to absolutely everything you want to get better at. Active recall is just a fancy word for testing yourself. For example, let's say after reading a page in this textbook, you should ask yourself, what have I just read? Why have I actually just read it? And can I rephrase it in my own words? If you struggle with this straight off the bat and it's something quite challenging, then maybe you should make a flashcard out of it, or just make a note or a question which you can use to test yourself repeatedly in the future when you come back to it. This process of testing yourself is called active recall, and the process of coming back to this question after a set period of time is called spaced repetition. Spaced repetition will allow you to remember things for longer and longer each time. It counters this thing called the forgetting curve. This shows us how much of the memory we actually lose. So you can take a minute to look at this, pause the video, and be able to examine a rough outline of how the forgetting process works in our heads. And if you leave it long enough without going back over it, then you'll just completely erase this from your memory. You can use spaced repetition by, for example, going over that question or flashcard you've made a day after you've wrote it, and then a few days after you wrote it, and then a week after you wrote it, and then a few months after you wrote it. And in this way, we're sort of stopping the forgetting process from happening, and we're interrupting the curve before our memory of that drops too much. And every time we struggle to answer the question, and every time we actually think of trying to answer it, our brain forms stronger links together. And in this way, you begin to memorize the content in a very strong way. And hopefully, if you do this over a long enough period of time, you'll be able to commit it to your long-term memory, which is the ultimate goal. Since this video is all about learning, I wanted to talk about today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is a lovely online learning community with amazing classes for anyone who loves learning and wants to explore creativity and learn new skills. And since we're going to talk about two techniques called active recall and spaced repetition, here's a class that I learned so much of this from. It's called How to Study for Exams Masterclass, and it's by the very famous YouTuber Ali Abdaal. In here, he teaches you how to study effectively from his own experience, so you can see this from multiple perspectives, not just mine. And this is where I got my ideas, and this is why I'm sharing this information with you. He teaches you things like understanding the content, how to remember the content, and how to remain focused and motivated through this whole process, which is really important when learning because a lot of people give up halfway. This video has made a big personal difference to my life and has improved my studying so much, and I can only imagine what it could do to yours. They've kindly given me my own link, and the first 1,000 people to use the link in the description below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare for you to learn absolutely anything you want on there. It's such a good place for you to learn, and I really hope you take advantage of this offer. Have a click on their website, explore it, and then determine what you think, as you may decide to learn something useful that will stay with you your entire life. Again, thank you very much Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Okay, so now let's put everything I've mentioned into actions with examples. So if we remember, the first point I talked about was understanding, and so I would normally understand content by reading it from a textbook or reading it from multiple sources online, and then going on to watch a lecture or video about it on YouTube. This way I'll be able to pause and take my time when really trying to understand this concept. And then to make sure I've understood it, I'd teach it to my friends. So we learn the same thing and we try to teach it to each other. And let's say I'm missing out a few vital steps. So then I make a flashcard about it, or make just a general question which I know I'll come back to. I make a general revision plan using the retrospective revision timetable, which I've talked about in this video in this corner. Then I know when to come back to it. So I'll come back to it after 3 days time, and then a week's time, and then a month's time. Then I'll assess my knowledge again to see if I remember it completely. When writing these questions, I make sure to ask them in a very effective way. For example, I'm not just writing the note and then the answer underneath, I'm writing a question which provokes me to actually struggle to remember it. And so next time I look over this question, my brain will form stronger links and be able to memorize it more for next time. And you can basically do this as many times as you want, and you want to do this with everything you struggle to learn. I would prioritize the things you struggle with most, and a general way to find out what your weakest subject is just to ask yourself, if the exam were tomorrow, what topic would I struggle on the most? And then you just focus on this. You can maybe draw a spider diagram, and this will show you your weaknesses and where you've forgotten parts of your memory, and then you know what to work on. So there we are. I hope this video has made sense and you've actually learnt how to learn better. If you have any comments, try to put them down below and I'll try to answer all of them. If you have any advice for each other on how to learn and anything like that, then also write them there, because we're all in this together and we're all trying to succeed. So that being said, thank you very much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed. Please like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.